It seems I was always the one left behind, not the main focus or the center of attention. That role belonged to my older sister, Anna. From the very beginning, everything just seemed to come easier for her. The attention, the gifts, the praise. I'm Emily, and this is the story of how I grew up in her shadow. Our home was decent enough, with Dad working as a mechanic and Mom as a part-time cashier. They may not have been wealthy, but they always seemed to have more than enough for Anna. As for me, I had to make do with the leftovers. One chilly December evening, which really set the tone for my whole childhood, we were gathered around the small dining table. Anna was excitedly telling our parents about a school project she had aced. Mom, Dad, my teacher, said it was the best in the class. She beamed, her face lit up with joy in a way that made our parents practically burst with pride. "That's my girl. We knew those science kits were a great investment," Dad said, his voice overflowing with nothing but admiration. Mom agreed, "We'll make sure you have whatever you need, honey. Just keep up the excellent work." I poked at my own dinner, feeling that familiar knot of envy and disappointment tighten in the pit of my stomach. Feeling uncertain, I quietly shared the news about my math exam, unsure why I even mentioned it. "That's nice, Emily," Mom said, barely glancing my way. "Make sure you keep it up." No praise, no excitement. It was like scoring well was expected of me, or worse, like it didn't even matter. I learned early on not to expect much. Christmas was a few weeks away, and the disparity in our living room was almost laughable. Under the tree, beautifully wrapped gifts piled up, all for Anna. I knew the routine. My gifts were usually things like socks or a book, nothing that screamed special. That year wasn't any different. Anna ripped through her presents with glee, uncovering new clothes, gadgets, and even a brand new laptop. "Oh my God, this is awesome." "Thanks, Mom and Dad," she squealed. I unwrapped my own, a second-hand novel and a pack of plain shirts. "Thanks," I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. When the holidays were over, things went back to the usual routine. Anna was the star, and I was just there. Aunt Sarah was the only one who seemed to notice. She dropped by now and then, always with a small gift just for me, something that made me feel seen. But those visits stopped after one particularly ugly argument. I was coming home from school when I overheard them in the kitchen. "You can't keep doing this, John. You're ignoring your younger daughter," Aunt Sarah said, her voice stern and full of frustration. "Sarah, she doesn't need as much as Anna," Dad fired back, his tone harsh. "That's not the point. It's about showing both your daughters that you care." "Well, maybe if Emily was more like her sister, it wouldn't be so hard," Dad retorted, not realizing I was listening. Aunt Sarah saw me first, her face dropping as she caught my eye. I ran up to my room before I heard more, the sting of tears hot on my cheeks. After that, Aunt Sarah wasn't allowed over any more. Dad said she was causing trouble, stirring up drama that didn't exist. But it did exist. I lived it every day. After high school, it was like standing at the edge of a cliff. Anna was off to college with a fat check from Mom and Dad to cover her dorm, books, everything. Me? I got a pat on the back and a "good luck, Emily." I moved out not long after that. There was no drama, no teary goodbyes, just me packing my few things into old boxes and suitcases while Mom watched, her face unreadable. I found a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The place was shared with two other girls, Lisa and Jen, who were about as broke as I was, but with dreams just as big. "Welcome to the dungeon," Lisa joked on the day I moved in, showing me around the cramped space with a laugh. "We make it work, though." "You got a job lined up." "Starting at the diner tomorrow," I replied, dumping a box on the bed that would be mine, "and maybe something at the bookstore, part-time." "Good hustle," Jen nodded, her eyes approving. "We all pitch in for rent on the first. No exceptions." Okay, got it, I assured her, already calculating my hours and expenses in my head. Working 2 jobs wasn't easy. The diner had me on my feet all day, taking orders, dodging the grumpy chef's temper, and smiling through it all. Nights or evenings I spent at the bookstore, shelving books and ringing up sales, the calm a stark contrast to the diner's chaos. Months turned into a year, and saving up for college seemed like chasing a mirage. Just when I'd have a little put aside, something came up. Like the time I got sick. It hit me out of nowhere. One day I was fine. The next I was burning up, barely able to get out of bed. Lisa found me like that, shivering under a pile of blankets. "Jesus, Em, you look like hell," she exclaimed, her face creased with concern. "You need a doctor." "I can't afford a doctor," I muttered, feeling the room spin a little. "We'll figure it out," she insisted, pulling out her phone. "There's a clinic. They charge based on what you earn. Don't be stubborn about this." The clinic was a crowded, weary place where the wait times could break you if the illness didn't. When my turn finally came, the doctor was a kind, tired-looking man who prescribed some meds and plenty of rest. "You need to take it easy," he advised, handing me a prescription. "Can you take some time off work?" I almost laughed. "Not really, but I'll see what I can do." Back at the apartment, I crunched the numbers. Meds, missed shifts, just scraping by on rent. It all added up too fast. My college fund, the little there was, dwindled to nothing after the medical ordeal, draining my savings. I knew I had to face it. I needed help. Swallowing my pride, I decided to call home. It had been a while since we talked, not properly since I moved out. The phone rang and I braced myself. "Mom, it's Emily." "Emily, this is unexpected. Everything okay?" Her voice was cautious, not warm or worried. "I need to ask a favor. Can I come home for a bit? Just till I get back on my feet." My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. There was a pause, the kind that tells you the answer won't be what you want to hear. "Oh, Emily, you know your sister just moved back in with her husband. They're using your old room. There's really no space." My heart sank, but I pushed on. "Can't we figure something out? Maybe I could sleep on the couch. It's just for a little while." There was another long pause. "I'm sorry, Emily. It's just not possible right now. Maybe when things settle down with Anna and the baby." I hung up and sat there, the silence of the apartment pressing down on me. They had made their choice, and I wasn't it. I was on my own, truly on my own. The next few days were a blur of applying for any job I could find, skipping meals to save a few bucks, and trying not to think about the fact that my own family had turned me away when I needed them the most. It was during one of my late-night job searches that I got a call from Aunt Sarah. "Emily, sweetheart, I heard about what happened. Are you okay?" Her voice was like a lifeline. "Hey, Aunt Sarah. I'm managing, just trying to figure things out. Listen, why don't you come stay with me for a while? You shouldn't be alone through this." I felt tears prick at my eyes, relief washing over me. "Really? Are you sure? I don't want to impose." "Of course I'm sure. You're not imposing. Your family, more than just when it's convenient. Pack your things and come over. We'll sort the rest out together." "Thank you, Aunt Sarah. Thank you so much," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Packing up my things again, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the rejection, but also the warmth of being welcomed without conditions. Aunt Sarah's place wasn't big, but it was filled with love, something that had been sorely missing for too long. When I arrived, Aunt Sarah was waiting at the door. She wrapped me in a big hug as soon as I stepped out of the cab. "You're home now, Emily. Let's not worry about anything else tonight," she said, ushering me inside. Life at Aunt Sarah's was different from anything I'd known. It was quiet, peaceful, and most importantly, I felt wanted. A few days after I moved in, Aunt Sarah and I sat down at her old, scarred kitchen table for some real talk. The morning sun spilled over the cluttered surface, turning the steam from our coffee cups into golden swirls. "So, Emily, what's the plan?" Aunt Sarah asked, her eyes locking onto mine with that direct, no-nonsense way she had. I took a deep breath, stirring my coffee slowly. "Honestly, Aunt Sarah, I want to go to college. I want to be a lawyer, but everything's just messed up right now." She nodded, tapping a finger on the table, thoughtful. "Lawyer, huh? That's a big dream, Emily. Big dreams are good. They keep us going, but they need big plans. What's stopping you?" "Money," I said flatly. "Money is stopping me. I've been working jobs, but it's never enough, especially not for law school." Aunt Sarah leaned back, her chair creaking slightly under the shift. "I might have a solution for that, but it comes with a condition." I frowned, curious and a bit wary. "What kind of condition?" "You get into college and I'll pay for it. But, Emily, you've got to commit. No half measures. You work your tail off, you study hard, and you pass everything. Not just pass Excel. Can you do that?" Her offer floored me. It was more than I could have hoped for. "Yes, I can do that. I will, Aunt Sarah. Thank you." With that, we started planning. I applied to colleges that offered good law programs, crafting application letters late into the night. When the acceptance letter from a well-respected state college came, I actually pinched myself, thinking I was dreaming. I did it, Aunt Sarah. I got in. College was tough, law school even tougher. Aunt Sarah's financial support freed me from the constant stress of money, but it put another kind of pressure on me, the pressure to succeed, not just for myself, but for her too. As semesters passed, I not only met Aunt Sarah's expectations, I exceeded them. My grades were top of the class, and I landed an internship at a local law firm. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the firm, I came home to find Aunt Sarah in the kitchen, her expression more serious than usual. "Sit down, Emily. We need to talk." Worry pricked at my heart as I took a seat, noticing she wasn't her usual self. "What's wrong, Aunt Sarah?" She sighed, a long, heavy sound. "Nothing's wrong exactly. I just want you to know how proud I am of you," Aunt Sarah said, her voice warm but with a hint of something unsaid. "You've done more than I ever expected. You're going to be a great lawyer." Her praise warmed me, but her tone hinted at something unspoken. "Thanks, Aunt Sarah. I couldn't have done it without you." "That's not just it," she continued, her eyes serious. "You've got to start thinking about what comes next. You're about to fly, and I'm just glad I could give you the wings." During my final year of law school, I managed to secure a prestigious internship at a respected law firm downtown. The first day I walked into the towering building, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My supervisor, a sharp-tongued lawyer named Mr. Coleman, met me at his office door with a skeptical look. "So you're the intern I've heard so much about. Emily, right?" Mr. Coleman's voice was gruff, his eyes scanning me like I was a case file he wasn't sure about. "Yes, sir. I'm here to learn and contribute as much as I can," I replied, my voice steady despite the butterflies dancing in my stomach. The work was intense. I spent days buried in legal research, drafting documents, and sometimes I was allowed to sit in on client meetings, observing the real dance of law. Mr. Coleman didn't hand out praise easily, but when he did, it stuck. One late evening, after everyone else had gone home, I was still at my desk, poring over a particularly tough case, when Mr. Coleman walked by. He stopped, looking over my shoulder at the piles of legal journals and notes spread out in front of me. "Don't you ever go home, Emily?" he asked, an eyebrow raised in amusement or maybe respect. I couldn't tell which. "Not until I figure this out," I answered without looking up. "This case could set a precedent, and I think there's an angle we've missed." Mr. Coleman grunted, pulling up a chair. "Show me." We spent the next hour discussing the case back and forth, with me arguing my point based on a precedent I found that could help our client. Finally, he leaned back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Not bad, Emily. Not bad at all. You've got a sharp mind for this. Keep it up, and you'll make a fine lawyer." The day I graduated, I felt a mix of pride and nostalgia. Aunt Sarah was in the front row, clapping louder than anyone else, her eyes shining with tears. After the ceremony, as we walked out of the auditorium, she hugged me tight. "You've done it, Emily, all those years of hard work, and here you are," she said, pulling back to look at me with that proud, unwavering support that had become my rock. "I couldn't have done it without you, Aunt Sarah. You believed in me when no one else did, not even myself," I said, my own eyes misty. With my law degree in hand, I started applying for jobs. The market was competitive, brutal even, but I was not deterred. I sent out dozens of applications, went on several nerve-wracking interviews, and finally, I got a call that would start the next chapter of my life. "Miss Emily, this is Jared from Mason and Associates. I'm pleased to inform you that we'd like to offer you the position. Your internship performance was highly recommended by Mr. Coleman, and we believe you'd be a great fit." I almost dropped the phone. "Thank you, Jared. I'd be honored to accept." When Aunt Sarah told me my sister Anna had never graduated college due to her early pregnancy and quick marriage, I wasn't really surprised. Aunt Sarah's health took a turn for the worse not long after that revelation. I was at work, buried in files, when I got the call from the hospital. My world stopped. I barely remember grabbing my things and rushing out. Everything after that was a blur until I reached her side. She was weak, her voice barely a whisper, but her eyes were the same, sharp and knowing. "Emily," she murmured as I took her hand, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "I'm here, Aunt Sarah. I'm right here," I managed to say, my voice trembling. She squeezed my hand, her grip frail but firm. "You did good, kid. I'm so proud of you. You remember what I always told you. To be strong, to stand up for myself," I replied, the tears I had been holding back now streaming down my face. "That's right, and you have," she said, her voice growing fainter. "I've left you something in my will. The house. It's yours now." I nodded, unable to speak, squeezing her hand. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. Later that night, she passed away quietly in her sleep. The months following her death were a blur of legal matters and settling into the house that was now legally mine. I transformed it into something that felt like a real home for the first time in my life. Then, out of the blue, my parents and Anna, with her husband and kids, decided to visit. I should have known they weren't just coming to check on how I was holding up. As soon as Anna walked in, she started inspecting the place like she was at an open house, commenting on every piece of furniture and layout. "Oh, this would be perfect for the kids," she said loudly. "Look at all the space, Mom." Her husband nodded, adding, "Yeah, we could really spread out here." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. It wasn't until my mother chimed in that I lost it. "Emily, you should really think about letting Anna have the house. They need the space, what with the kids and all. You can manage fine in a smaller place, can't you?" I stared at them, disbelief turning quickly into anger. "Are you serious? This is my house. Aunt Sarah left it to me, not to Anna. I'm not going anywhere." Anna, who had been pretty quiet, finally piped up, her voice dripping with entitlement. "But you don't need all the space, Emily. It's just you here. We're a family of 5. It just makes sense for us to have it." That's when I laughed. It wasn't because anything was funny, but because the sheer audacity of their request was absurd. You think just because you have kids and a husband, I have to give up my home? That's not how this works. Mom looked shocked. "Emily, don't be greedy. Think of the family." "Family?" I scoffed, the word bitter in my mouth. Where was this family when I needed a place to stay? When I needed help, they didn't have an answer to that. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing on me, but this time I wasn't going to crumble under it. "Look," I said, my voice firm as I stood up taller, "I appreciate you all coming here, but this house is mine. Aunt Sarah wanted me to have it, and I'm going to honor her wish. You need to leave now." Anna's husband tried to argue, his face turning red, but I didn't let him get far. "Out. All of you, now or I'll call the police." They muttered about me being ungrateful and greedy as they gathered their things. Anna shot me a look that could freeze lava, her disappointment clear. But as they left, the weight on my shoulders lifted. I had stood up for myself, for my home, and for Aunt Sarah's memory. A few days later, I came home from work to the most absurd situation. I couldn't get into my own house. The locks had been changed. Before I could process what was happening, I heard noises inside and started banging on the door. It swung open, and there stood Anna with her husband and their kids scattered behind her. "We've decided to move in here," she declared with a smug look, as if it was the most natural decision in the world. "What are you talking about? This is my house," I snapped, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. Anna shrugged, unbothered. "Well, we need it more than you do. We've already moved everything in." "That's not how any of this works, Anna. I'm calling the police," I said, fumbling for my phone. She laughed, clearly thinking I was bluffing. "Sure, go ahead." I dialed 911, and while we waited, our parents showed up, drawn by the commotion. They sided with Anna, of course. "Emily, why are you being so difficult? This is family. We should stick together," Mom said, her voice high-pitched and nervous. "Dad, tell her," Anna added, turning to our father, who just frowned at me. "This is just plain wrong, and you know it," I shot back, the reality of the situation making my hands shake with rage. Anna's husband, who had been silent until then, stepped up. "Just drop it, Emily, otherwise you'll regret it," he sneered, his tone menacing. I started recording on my phone, aiming it at him. "Threaten me again, and it's on record." He lunged for the phone, but I sidestepped him. Right then, the police arrived. It didn't take long for them to assess the situation. My sister was crying now, her kids confused and scared. Anna's husband kept saying, "It's just a family matter," trying to downplay his earlier aggression. Mom was sobbing by now, pleading with the officers. "Please, they're just kids. They don't understand. We're her family." I took a deep breath before I explained to the police. They broke in and changed the locks. I didn't give them permission. This is my house. The officers were firm. Breaking into a house and changing the locks is illegal, even if you are family, one of them told Anna and her husband. Finally realizing the seriousness of the situation, my family's bluster faded. The police made it clear they had to leave. Reluctantly, and with plenty of resentful glances thrown my way, they gathered their things and left. After the police were gone, I called a locksmith to change the locks again, this time making sure no one else had the keys. As I stood in the doorway of my reclaimed space, the silence was heavy, filled with the echoes of the confrontation. But I also felt a deep sense of relief. I had protected what was mine. It was a few months later when I met Mike. He was a friend of a friend, introduced to me at a small gathering. Mike was easy to talk to, with a straightforward way about him that I appreciated. "So you've had quite the year, huh?" Mike said, handing me a drink with a knowing smile. "You could say that," I replied, the corner of my mouth tilting up in a half smile. "It's been eventful." As the evening went on, we talked about everything and nothing. Music, books, our shared disdain for soggy French fries. It was refreshing, talking to someone who didn't see me as the overlooked sister or the woman who kicked her family out. Weeks turned into months, and Mike started coming around more often. One quiet evening, as we sat watching a movie with a bowl of popcorn between us, Mike turned to me. "Emily, I've been thinking," he began, pausing the movie. "Yeah," I responded, my heart skipping a beat. "I cherish what we have together. I know your home is your private haven, but I was wondering if you'd be open to me becoming a more permanent part of it," he asked softly. As I truly looked at him, I saw everything I needed in his sincere, hopeful gaze. I simply replied, "I'd like that," and a joyful smile illuminated the room. Our life didn't instantly become perfect, but Mike's presence made it feel much lighter. We faced a few more challenges, like when Anna tried to stir up trouble by spreading rumors about me being heartless. But this time I didn't face it alone. "Let them talk," Mike said one evening after I received a frustrating call from Mom about how upset Anna was. "The people who truly know you, they know the truth. That's what matters." He was right. Gradually, I began to let go of the anger and resentment. It wasn't worth holding on to. Instead, I focused on the good, the home I was building, both the physical space around me and the emotional walls I was allowing to come down.